position themselves to monitor what goes on in CDCR. The CDCR headquarters in Sacramento are the ones who oversees all the prisons, and they put these wardens in place to mismanage these prisons because, they appropriate funds, and everybody gets paid, but the jobs are never really done. The whole premise of CDCR is almost like sleeping on the job. There's so many shortages of staff. People don't even want to come to work in these prison systems because of the division, of law enforcement and criminality that's going on. And you got a lot of prison officials who really are trying to advance their careers in law enforcement and trying to do the right thing by the inmates, but at the same time, in doing your job, you can't cater to the inmate and give the inmate what he wants if you're really, really law enforcement, but then you have to draw a line to where you have to become familiar with the inmate population in order to be able to provide services, provide mobility, provide leverage for inmates to be able to function in prison without being under that strict enforcement to where, it's like the pinstripes and the ball and chain. We don't have that in prison today, but they have a different form of it because, modern technology, and the laws itself, they prohibit cruel and unusual punishment, but they find a way to dance around that. The Constitution prohibits due process violation and equal protection laws, and they find ways to wiggle around that. They're just it's a matter of circumvention and a matter of connivance. And those two words itself, are large in prison because inmates don't even know the meanings of them or the definition of them. Some do. But connivance is a form of turning a blind eye on the law. People, they see that the wrong is going on, but they turn their head instead of doing what they need to do to correct it. The circumvention, they circumvent the policies. The rules and the regulations are laid out, but they find gray areas and ways to get around complying with the law. And it's a hand-in-hand type of thing to where inmates don't like to be up under the rule of law, but at the same time, inmates are allowed to roam freely within the prison system.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
In order to allow the prison officials to control it and allow for it to work. So it's like I say, there is a catch-22 to all of this, and it's bigger than a whole lot of us. A lot of us in prison don't realize that so many of us could have gotten out of prison a long time ago if it wasn't for the distractions, the chaos between the gangs, the chaos between the filtering and dissemination of information on inmates to other inmates. CDCR probably will, blatantly deny that they do these things, but prison officials have leverage to do a whole lot of things because they're not being overseen as much as they should. They have free range to take initiatives and deal with the inmate population as being the front line, the ground floor people, the correctional officers and the correctional sergeants. These are the people who are in the presence of the inmates' day-to-day living, whereas the ranking officials sit in the background, like bigwigs, and just sit there and call shots and enforce and implement different procedures and policies, but they don't have to deal with the groundwork and make it work, and it's a difficult task. So going back, I just, like I say, it's easy for me to be all over the place because there's so many things about CDCR that are going on. There's so many versions of it. There's so many views and opinions of it, and some people have a tendency to, like I say, close their eyes or turn a blind eye to what's going on because they don't want.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
They don't want the reality of it to be viewed as they're endorsing this because they're making money too. So if it looks like they're making money fraudulently or, corruptly through the mismanagements and the misappropriations of funds and how they feed us up in here and how they dress us and all those things like that, they would stand guilty as charged, but everybody does it to the best of their ability and make it seem as though there's no real grand scheme, but there is. We're going to have to pause for a second to regroup, and we'll return momentarily.
Okay.
Okay, and continuing.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
I was speaking about the circumvention and the connivance, and I brought those matters up because there's a perception that CDCR puts out, and there's a reality that the inmates have to live and face within the prison walls, based on those forms of circumvention and connivance. And I go back again to say about we didn't have a voice in prison to be able to address what goes on in prison. The very things that we were being subjected to, we had to use their own systems that they put in place to grieve these matters and try to address what was going on and what we're being subjected to, while again having to answer to the same people who were doing the very things to us that were a problem. And when you have, it's almost like the old saying, the fox guarding the chicken coop. That's what we going on in here in terms of them violating our rights and doing wrongs by us. But we have to ask them to stop or point out to them what they did to us, which they already know what they did, but they have a way of dummying up, acting as if they don't know what we're talking about, unless you're articulate enough to point out on paper exactly what's going on, what they did, what they didn't do, their actions and their inactions. So and again, it's chaotic because if you don't have the educational skills and the ability to use common sense, you're going to be blinded to the things that they do, because the officers work with a smile on their face a lot. The officers become desensitized. They become a part of the system as well. They got officers who look at these the gangs and the gang activities, and they start taking on these characteristics themselves. They walk around, with swag. They try to wear their uniforms like they're so important, like they're on television. They engage in stuff that they're not supposed to be doing. Like uses of force. They watch these TV programs, these MMA, these wrestling shows and these cage wrestling, and then they come up in here lifting weights where inmates can't lift weights no more. They take that away from us. The wardens have the discretion to give us weights so we can stay fit again, but the prison system allowed to do the very things that they stopped inmates from doing. So they come in here with their tight T-shirts on and they, posture, like they're just, real strong, bad people, and then when incidents occur, they find, you got officers who, with that cowboy stuff, and they, choke inmates out, they take inmates down, and they put inmates in these positions where they're utilizing force that they're not trained to use, and it's unlawful use of force, but they cover that well because, inmates have died in prison and inmates have been injured very, very much, but they got officers in here who go for bad, they want to be recognized in the prison system as tough guys in the eyes of the female officers who, or some of them are impressed, with the tough cowboy type, some of them are smart enough to come in and reap the benefits of their job by just doing their job, and doing an 8-hour shift and getting up out of there back to their daily living. But because this environment produces so many different things where officers are able to, the shortages of staff are so prevalent that officers are able to just work overtime at an all-time high and just rake in money, And I'm not the one who hates on anybody who's trying to earn a living. But, when it becomes, to the point where all it is about making money, inmates sit in their cells, they devise little schemes and ways, for inmates to have to sit in their cells day in and day out, while officers sit up in the offices and sit in the towers and just sit on telephones and eat on their cell phones and, eat with their feet up, and they don't even have to do work, These are the things that don't like being exposed because this benefits the officers, and then when the officers cater to the inmates and allow inmates to have a little movement and let a couple guys out, to do this and do that and rip and roam and run around, like they're important. And these inmates need the movement because this has been a way of taking care of the rest of the inmate population or their own people. So it's a lot of manipulation. There's a lot of circumvention. There's a whole lot of misleading. There's a whole lot of things that, even the inmate who's allowed mobility, carte blanche status,
right,
where they're able to just have the free will to roam.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Like they got badges, and it's sad to say, these inmates perform in these positions and are oblivious. They become so shameless that they don't care about how it looks.
right.
They just only look at the results. They're able to get around and take care of their people. So the blacks, the Hispanics, they pick one or two guys out of each race, and let them walk around, and it's sad because the black race is categorized as one black race when blacks have Crips, Bloods, non-affiliates, BGFs. They have Northern Crips. Then you got the Asian cars. They just call the Asians as others. You're just other.
Okay, Clarence,
and it's so racial.
we're going to have to cut this off. Everyone, our listeners, we're coming back with part 2 of this discussion. And just hang in there with us and keep being informed. Change has to come. Be back.